There is a peculiar quality to the way a truly awakened man moves through the world. Watch him at a party, in a meeting, at a family gathering. While others cluster and compete, perform and pretend, he stands apart, not physically but spiritually. He occupies the same space, breathes the same air, yet exists in a fundamentally different dimension of being. This is not arrogance. This is not superiority. This is simply the natural consequence of having seen what others have not yet glimpsed, the profound illusion that most mistake for reality. The chosen man walks alone not because he chooses isolation, but because he is awakened to a truth that cannot be shared through words, cannot be conveyed through explanations, and cannot be transferred through persuasion. He has discovered something that must be experienced directly, individually, in the solitude of one's own consciousness. The recognition phase. He begins to see what others cannot. He begins to notice at first in conversations. The endless circling around nothing, the desperate grasping for validation, the unconscious performance of roles that no one truly wants to play. While others speak, he hears the silence beneath their words. While others gesture frantically toward meaning, he sees the emptiness they're trying to fill. He doesn't judge this. How could he? He remembers being lost in the same maze, seeking the same external confirmations, playing the same exhausting games. But something has shifted in perception, like adjusting the focus on a lens that suddenly brings a background into sharp clarity while the foreground blurs. The recognition comes in waves. First, he notices how much energy people spend maintaining images that bring them no joy. He sees the businessman who despises his success, the socialite who fears her own company, the activist who has forgotten what peace feels like. He observes the endless hunger for more approval, more achievement, more stimulation, and recognizes it as a symptom of a deeper emptiness that no external thing can fill. He begins to see that what most people call living is actually a form of elaborate avoiding. They avoid silence through noise, avoid stillness through constant motion, avoid depth through endless distraction. They fill every moment with doing, because they've forgotten how to simply be. And in this seeing, something profound happens. He stops participating in the collective delusion, not with fanfare or declaration, but with the quiet certainty of someone who has found solid ground beneath shifting sands. The gradual separation, the old ways no longer work. The change happens slowly, almost imperceptibly. He stops engaging in conversations that go nowhere. He stops pretending to care about things that don't matter. He stops offering the expected responses to social rituals that have lost all meaning. When someone complains about their self-created problems for the 100th time, he no longer offers solutions they won't use or sympathy they don't truly want. When people gather to gossip, he finds himself naturally drifting away. When groups form around shared grievances or common enemies, he feels no pull to join. This is a withdrawal born of judgment or superiority. It's the natural response of someone who has tasted something real and can no longer pretend to be satisfied with substitutes. Like a person who has discovered fresh spring water, losing interest in artificial flavoring. He simply no longer finds nourishment in what once sustained him. He stops trying to explain his perspective to those who aren't asking genuine questions. He learns the difference between curiosity and the need to debate, between openness and the desire to convert. He recognizes that most people aren't actually seeking truth. They're seeking confirmation of what they already believe. The old social contract began to feel foreign to him. The unspoken agreement to maintain pleasant fictions, to avoid uncomfortable truths, to keep things light and superficial. These no longer seem like kindness, but like a form of mutual imprisonment. He finds himself naturally gravitating towards silence, towards solitude, toward the company of his own deeper nature. Not because he dislikes people, but because he has discovered something within himself that is more engaging, more nourishing, more alive than most external interactions. The misunderstanding phase. Others interpret as change. They begin to notice his absence from their dramas. They sense his disengagement from their familiar patterns. And because they interpret everything through the lens of their own experience, they create stories to explain what they don't understand. They call him antisocial when he stops attending gatherings that drain his energy. They label him arrogant when he no longer pretends to be impressed by achievements that bring no real fulfillment. They say he thinks he's better than everyone else when he simply stops participating in competitions he no longer finds meaningful. Some become angry at his refusal to play the old games. They take his authenticity as a personal judgment of their own choices. His peace becomes a mirror that reflects their own inner turmoil, and they resent the reflection. Others try to pull him back into the familiar patterns. They create crises that require his attention, manufacture urgencies that demand his participation, offer temptations designed to reactivate his old desires. When these fail, they may resort to guilt, manipulation, or emotional blackmail. A few will sense something different about him and become curious. But even these well-meaning seekers often want to extract his secret, to learn his technique, to acquire his peace without undergoing the inner transformation that created it. They want the fruit without planting the tree, the harvest without tending the soil. The irony is profound. In becoming more authentically himself, he appears to others to be becoming less human. In discovering his true nature, he seems to lose the artificial characteristics that others mistake for personality. In finding genuine connection with existence itself, he appears to disconnect from the social web, the deepening understanding. He stops pretending. As the misunderstandings accumulate and the social pressure intensifies, something crystallizes in his awareness. He realizes that most of his life has been spent in elaborate pretense, pretending to want things he doesn't actually want, pretending to believe things he doesn't actually believe, pretending to be someone he isn't actually meant to be. The pretense wasn't malicious or calculated. It was a natural result of growing up in a world where authentic expression is rarely welcomed, where conformity is rewarded and individuality is subtly punished. Like everyone else, he learned to wear masks, to play roles, to become acceptable rather than authentic. But awakening dissolves pretense the way sunrise dissolves shadows. It's not that he chooses to stop pretending. Pretense simply becomes impossible when you can see clearly what is true and what is false within yourself. He stops pretending to be interested in small talk, when what moves him is the mystery of existence itself. He stops pretending to be motivated by external rewards when his deepest satisfaction comes from alignment with his own nature. He stops pretending to need others' approval when he's found an inner source of validation that never runs dry. This isn't rebellion or rejection. It's simply honesty, like a plant growing toward light. He naturally orientates toward what nourishes his authentic being and away from what constrains or diminishes it. The paradox is that in stopping the pretense, he becomes more genuinely loving, not less. No longer performing care out of social obligation, his natural compassion flows freely. No longer offering fake enthusiasm, his genuine excitement becomes more precious. No longer giving attention from duty, his presence becomes a true gift. The path of solitude, finding what was always there. In the growing solitude, he makes a remarkable discovery. He is never truly alone. Beneath the social self that craves constant company and validation lies a deeper self that is complete, whole, and eternally connected to something vast and indefinable. This solitude isn't empty, it's full of presence, of awareness, of a profound sense of belonging to existence itself. In the silence that others fear, he finds a richness that no conversation could provide. In the stillness that others avoid, he discovers a movement that is more dynamic than any external activity. He learns to distinguish between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness is the pain of separation, the ache for what is missing. Aloneness is the peace of completeness, the joy of what is present. One is a wound, the other is a homecoming. In this aloneness, he finds that he doesn't need to explain himself to anyone, justify his choices to anyone, or seek permission from anyone to be who he is. This isn't selfishness. It's a natural state of someone who has stopped abandoning himself for others' comfort. The external world continues its familiar rhythms. People continue their searching, their struggling, their performing, but he no longer feels compelled to join the search for what he has already found, to struggle against what is already accepted, to perform for audiences who wouldn't recognize authenticity if they saw it. The transformation of relationships, quality over quantity. As he settles more deeply into his authentic being, something interesting happens to his relationships. While the quantity decreases dramatically, the quality transforms completely. Those who remain in his life are no longer there out of habit obligation, or mutual neediness. They are there because something genuine connects them, a recognition, a resonance, a shared appreciation for what is real rather than what is merely conventional. Conversations become deeper, more nourishing, more alive. Instead of exchanging information or maintaining social bonds, interactions become explorations of truth, celebrations of beauty, sharings of wonder. The small talk that once filled his days is replaced by meaningful connection or comfortable silence. He discovers that authentic relationships require no maintenance, no effort, no performance. Like rivers finding the sea, they flow naturally when aligned with truth and dry up naturally when based on pretense. With family, the dynamic shifts subtly but profoundly. He loves them no less, but he no longer needs their approval or fears their disapproval. This paradoxically allows him to love them more freely, without the agenda of getting something back. His presence becomes a gift offered without expectation of return. Old friendships that were based on shared complaints, mutual dependencies, or similar masks naturally fade away. New connections form with those who recognize something authentic in him and are themselves ready for that level of genuineness. He realizes that most people fear real intimacy far more than they fear loneliness. True intimacy requires dropping all pretenses, all protective strategies, all careful presentations of self. It requires meeting another person in the naked truth of who you actually are, not who you think you should be. The deeper wisdom, understanding the cosmic play. As his journey into authentic solitude deepens, he begins to perceive the larger pattern of existence with startling clarity. He sees that the very forces that seem to isolate him from others are actually connecting him to something infinitely more vast and meaningful. He recognizes that his apparent separation from a human drama is actually a form of deeper participation in the cosmic play. Like an actor who has awakened to the fact that he is in a play, he can continue performing his role without being imprisoned by it. The awakened man understands that most human suffering comes from taking the play too seriously, from identifying completely with the character rather than remembering the player behind the character. In stepping back from complete identification with his social self, he hasn't become less human. He has become more conscious of what human truly means. He sees that the mass of humanity is caught in a kind of collective hypnosis, believing deeply in the reality of things that are ultimately temporary, partial, and illusory. Money, status, reputation, achievement. These things aren't inherently wrong, but mistaking them for the ultimate reality leads to inevitable suffering. His aloneness becomes a form of service, though few recognize it as such. By refusing to participate in the collective delusions, he helps to keep alive the possibility that there are other ways to be human. His very existence becomes a quiet testimony to the fact that the conventional path is not the only path. Like a lighthouse standing apart from the shore, his solitary presence signals to other seekers that there is solid ground beyond the turbulent waters of conventional life. He doesn't need to preach or proselytize. His being itself becomes a message. The paradox of connection, alone but never separate. The deeper he goes into his essential solitude, the more he realizes a profound paradox. In walking alone, he has never been more connected to everything. The boundaries that once seemed so solid, between self and other, between inner and outer, between sacred and mundane, reveal themselves to be constructions of thought rather than actual divisions in reality. In the deepest solitude, he discovers that he is not separate from the whole, but is an expression of it. This isn't a philosophical concept, but a living reality. He feels the trees breathing with his breath, the stars pulsing with his heartbeat, the oceans flowing with his blood. The aloneness is revealed to be all oneness, a perfect unity disguised as separation. He understands now why he could never truly explain his path to others in a way that would satisfy their curiosity. The truth he has discovered is not information that can be transmitted, but a reality that must be lived. Like trying to describe the color blue to someone born blind, words inevitably fall short of the actual experience. This recognition brings a deep compassion for those still caught in the illusion of separation. He sees that their clinging to relationships, their desperate need for connection, their fear of being alone, all stem from not yet realizing that they are never actually separate from the whole. His walking alone is not a withdrawal from love, but a return to its source. No longer seeking love from others to fill an imagined emptiness, he becomes a fountain of love flowing freely without need for reciprocation or recognition. The natural authority, leading by being, without seeking leadership or authority. He naturally becomes a reference point for those ready to question the conventional wisdom, not because he promotes himself, but because authenticity has its own magnetic quality. People sense something different about him, though they may not be able to articulate what it is. In a world full of people trying to convince others of their worth, his lack of need for validation stands out. In a culture of constant self-promotion, his quiet confidence is both rare and powerful. He doesn't need to argue for his perspective because he has moved beyond the realm where truth needs to be defended. Like the sun doesn't need to argue for its brightness. His understanding shines through his being rather than his words. When he does speak, his words carry weight not because of the credentials or achievements, but because they emerge from direct experience rather than borrowed knowledge. He speaks from the silence rather than about the silence, from the peace rather than about the peace. Others may try to make him into a teacher, guru, or leader, but he naturally deflects such projections. He knows that what they seek in him is actually within themselves, and any attempt to become what they want will be a betrayal of the truth that set him free. His influence spreads not through effort, but through presence, like a stone dropped in still water. The ripples of his authenticity extend far beyond his immediate circle, touching lives in ways he may never know. The dissolution of need, beyond seeking and finding. As his journey continues, even the last traces of spiritual seeking begin to dissolve. He has found what he was looking for, though it turned out to be quite different from what he expected to find. What he sought outside himself, peace, love, meaning, purpose, he discovered were never missing. The seeking itself had been based on a false premise that he was incomplete, that something essential was lacking, that fulfillment lay somewhere in the future or in some other condition. The great joke becomes clear. He was already what he was trying to become, already had what he was trying to get, already was where he was trying to go. The journey was not towards something, but a journey of recognition, not of acquisition, but of revelation. This doesn't make the journey meaningless. Quite the opposite. The journey was necessary for the recognition to occur. Like a snake that must shed its skin to grow, he had to outgrow his limited self-concepts to discover his essential nature. He no longer seeks teachers because he has found the ultimate teacher within. He no longer seeks experiences because he has found the experiencer. He no longer seeks love because he has discovered that he is love itself. This isn't the end of growth or learning, but the end of the desperate searching that characterizes earlier years. Growth continues, but now it's organic, natural, like a tree growing toward a light rather than like a person frantically digging for buried treasure. The flowering of solitude, creating from wholeness. In his deep solitude, creativity begins to flow in ways he never experienced when he was trying to impress others or meet external expectations. No longer creating to fill an inner void or to gain recognition. His expressions emerge from fullness rather than emptiness. Whether it's art, writing, music, or simply the art of living itself, his creations carry a quality of authenticity that can't be manufactured or imitated. They emerge from silence, from stillness, from the depth of his being rather than from the surface of his personality. He creates not because he needs to express something, but because expression is a natural overflow of a consciousness that has touched its source. Like a spring that bubbles up from underground streams, his creativity is effortless and inexhaustible. Others may try to analyze his work, to understand his techniques, to replicate his process. But what gives his creations their power is not technique, but the consciousness in which they emerge. And consciousness cannot be copied, only embodied. His life itself becomes a work of art, not through careful design, but through authentic expression. Every action, every choice, every moment of being becomes an expression of his deepest understanding, a celebration of existence itself. The wisdom of seasons, accepting the natural cycles. He comes to understand that his journey into solitude, like everything in nature, has its seasons. There are times of deep withdrawal, of inner exploration, of silence and stillness. And there are times of natural emergence, of sharing, of connection with others. But these cycles are no longer driven by need or fear. The withdrawal isn't escape, and the emergence isn't performance. Both arise naturally from his authentic being, like breathing in and breathing out, each serving its purpose in the larger rhythm of his existence. He learns to trust these cycles, to honor both the seasons of solitude and the seasons of connection without trying to force or resist either. Like a tree that doesn't apologize for shedding its leaves in autumn or for budding in spring, he allows his natural rhythms to unfold without judgment. This acceptance brings a deep peace that transcends the temporary pleasures and pains of external circumstances. He is no longer at war with himself, no longer trying to be other than what he is, no longer resisting the natural flow of his existence. In this acceptance, he discovers that happiness is not a feeling to be pursued, but his natural state when he stops interfering with his own being. Peace is not something to achieve, but something to stop disturbing. Love is not something to find, but something to stop blocking. The ultimate recognition, the pathless path. In the deepest moments of his solitude, he realizes that there was never actually a path to where he has arrived. The spiritual seeking, the teachers, the books, the practices, while they served their purpose, were ultimately pointing him back to what was always already here. He was never actually lost, never actually separate, never actually incomplete. The entire journey was a universe playing hide and seek with itself, consciousness temporarily forgetting its own nature so it could experience the joy of rediscovering it. This recognition doesn't diminish the reality of the journey or the genuine suffering that prompted it. Just as a dream is experienced as real while you're dreaming it, the journey of awakening is real while it's happening, but from the perspective of what is discovered. He sees it all as perfect play, divine comedy, cosmic dance. He understands now why the great sages often spoke in paradoxes, and why the deepest truths can't be grasped by the thinking mind. Reality is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. Not a puzzle to be figured out, but a game to be played with full engagement and ultimate detachment. The chosen man who walks alone has discovered that he was never alone and was never not chosen. The walking was always in place. The choice was always already made. The man was always already perfect just as he was. The gift of his presence, service through being. Now, in his deep solitude and profound peace, he recognizes that his very existence is a gift to the world. Not through what he does, but through what he is. Not through his actions, but through his being. Not through his words, but through his silence. In a world gone mad with seeking, his contentment is healing. In a culture addicted to more, his satisfaction with what is provides a different possibility. In a society terrified of solitude, his embrace of aloneness offers an alternative vision of human flourishing. He doesn't need to save anyone because he understands that everyone is already whole, already perfect, already exactly where they need to be in their own journey. His role is not to fix or rescue, but simply to be an example of what becomes possible when someone stops running from themselves and starts returning home. Those who are ready will recognize something in his presence that calls to them. Those who are not ready will continue their own perfect journey at their own perfect pace. He has no agenda for either group, no investment in their choices, no attachment to their understanding. His love has become impersonal in the most profound sense. Not cold or distant, but free from the personal needs and expectations that usually contaminate human love. He loves because love is his nature, not because he needs anything in return. The eternal return coming full circle. As his journey into authentic solitude continues to deepen, he begins to see that he has come full circle. He has returned to where he started, to himself, to the present moment, to the simple reality of being here now, but with completely transformed understanding. The world looks the same, but he sees it with different eyes. People behave the same way, but he understands them with a deeper compassion. Life presents the same challenges, but he meets them with a different quality of presence. He realizes that the seeking was never about getting somewhere else, but about being more fully where he already was. The journey was never about becoming someone different, but about being more authentically who he had always been beneath all the conditioning and confusion. In this recognition, even the identity of being the chosen man who walks alone begins to dissolve. It was a necessary stage, a helpful story, a useful framework for understanding his experience. But ultimately, even this identity is just another concept, another limitation on the unlimited reality of what he actually is. What remains when all identities fall away? What continues when all stories end? What is present when all concepts disappear? This is what is found in his deepest solitude, the unchanging awareness that was never born and will never die, the eternal presence that is the source and destination of all journeys. The final understanding, beyond walking, beyond aloneness. In the end, he discovers that there is no chosen man and there is no walking alone. These were useful pointers, helpful metaphors, necessary stages in the journey of recognition. But what is found transcends all categories, all descriptions, all attempts to capture in concepts. He has found what was never lost. He has returned to what he never left. He has discovered what was never hidden. The seeking and the finding, the walking and the arriving, the alone and the together, all reveal themselves as movements within something that is eternally still, eternally present, eternally complete. This is not withdrawal from the world, but the deepest possible engagement with it. This is not rejection of others, but the most profound acceptance of all beings. This is not the end of love, but love finally free from all conditions and limitations. The man who appeared to walk alone has discovered that he is the very ground upon which all walking happens, the very space in which all beings appear, the very awareness in which all experiences arise and pass away. And in this final recognition, the last trace of separation dissolves. There is no longer a man who walks alone, because there is no longer anyone separate enough to be alone. There is only this infinite, intimate, immediate, the eternal dance of consciousness knowing itself through the beautiful play of apparent separation and ultimate unity. This is why the chosen man always walks alone. Not because he is separate from others, but because he has discovered that he is the very oneness in which the appearance of others arises. His solitude is the solitude of the one that alone is, appearing as the many yet never divided, forever whole yet playing a being part. In this understanding, walking alone becomes the most natural thing in the world, not as rejection or withdrawal, but as a spontaneous expression of what it means to be completely, authentically, uncompromisingly real.